Good, good. Well, it's great to see everyone here today. And I want to thank everybody for joining me on this interactive panel on bettering technology and the minority workforce during the annual CBCF ALC conference. I hope that everybody is enjoying the conference. I hope that you are pacing yourself because we still have a couple of days to go before the banquet on Saturday. But I hope that you're meeting a lot of new people, networking, and getting to go to so many of the really good discussions and brain trusts that are happening here today. And I think that this one is very special and that you're going to like it if you have not done this before. I want to give a special shout out to Chevron, eBay, Verizon, LinkedIn, PwC, and coequal.org for joining me here today and helping us create the best policy hacks to better address technology workforce opportunities for minorities across our country. America really is leading in the tech industry. I can see that in the district that I represent in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have a large number of tech companies that are creating new jobs, creating new opportunities all across the Metroplex, where since the last census was taken in 2010, we've added about 1 million new residents in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's just how rapidly we're growing. And every year, this industry does a great job of not only boosting our economy, but helping us solve some of the world's most pressing problems that need answers. But the growing workforce leads our country in innovation that also faces a very crucial problem, and that's really a lack of diversity in the workforce, particularly in the tech workforce. And as a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and I actually serve on the subcommittee on communications and technology, we talk about these issues from time to time. We want to be at the forefront of creating policy solutions that will make sure that the tech industry can work hand in hand with us to be sure that we increase diversity. That's why today's interactive competition is aimed at hacking our way to policy solutions that will best address technology workforce opportunities for minorities. We've had several hearings on the Communications and Technology Subcommittee regarding how to increase diversity in the new tech economy. And now it's time to hear from constituents and all of you from across the country that's taken the time to come here. And I look forward to hearing your new and innovative ideas and cannot wait to see which team prevails. And also want to give a special shout out to Chris Turner and Dell Technologies that are here also for, again, just being a part of this. Chris, thank you so much. Yeah, really, really appreciate it. They do a great job of really bringing in a lot of the equipment and helping us to put all of this together. So, yeah, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, too.
Yeah. So with that, I'm going to have Nicole bring Chris up. Yeah. And Chris is going to introduce the panelists and get us started. Yeah.
Hey, good afternoon, y'all. Hey. My name is Chris Turner. I'm with Dell Technologies. I am the head of government and public affairs for the Americas region. So I cover basically Canada to Argentina and everything in between, handling public policy, public affairs, government affairs, etc. And this is something that we came up with, this idea of a policy hack, several years ago when a group of us were sitting in a room down at South by Southwest and said, hey, you know what? We are not the smartest people in this room. Everybody else is, and we stand up here lecturing everyone that knows more about what we're talking about than we do. So how can we harness the power of the people that show up to these events and direct them towards actually driving solutions as opposed to listening to us talk? So that's sort of where the policy hack was born. And we thank Congressman Vesey. This is the second time we've brought this here to the Black Caucus ALC week, and it is, in my opinion, the most dynamic event that actually happens here because y'all are working on actual solutions that can then in turn be used to solve problems. The winning idea last year, the congressman actually worked to turn into legislation. I don't know of any other thing you're going to attend today where there's a direct translation between the sweat equity you put into on the table over the next hour and actual progress being made in Congress or across the country. This is unique in giving you that opportunity and that voice. With that, you've got some computers in front of you. We love everyone, so you've got some Dell computers, you got some Apple computers, you got some I don't know what. We love them all. And on those, you will have a topic against which you will have an hour to come up with an innovative solution to the policy challenge that is in front of you relating to technology and the workforce. That solution should blend sort of private sector opportunities and public sector regulation into an idea that is, one, innovative and novel, so not sort of repeating what's already out there. That is, two, scalable, meaning that it's not just something that happens in a box, but it could be replicated at least across the United States. And three, is within the realm of possibility, right? So it's not something that requires a constitutional amendment change, for example, which is a very small probability of success. And then finally, it should have an actionable piece for the congressman, for the judges, for Dell to be able to get started on, right? So what can you do in the first 18 months with your idea to start the ball moving forward? And those are the criteria against which the panel of judges will be evaluating your idea and selecting a winner. I'll introduce them later, right before we start hacking, but all of the companies and brands and nonprofits that the congressman called out earlier, those are your judges. So those are the people from the private sector and from nonprofit America that are going to be evaluating your solution and choosing a winner. With that, you've got about an hour. I will be giving you shout outs as to when the countdown is coming. The presentation itself should be between no more than 6 minutes. And then the judges will be able to ask you a question, probably 3 questions given the time that we'll have, so not every judge will be able to ask a question, and then you'll have about a minute to respond to each judge's question. Any questions either on the overall approach that we're taking to this process or on the details as I just described them? Yes, please.
So you mentioned that there needs to be some type of an actionable element, and it needs to be something that would be able to be replicated nationwide. And just for the sake of helping us have a starting point,
yeah.
Is it okay if we use a specific state as a framework model within the policy?
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. If what your idea ends up being is a pilot that will exist in a particular community, and that's what gets you the 18 months to start, that's fine, so long as you're building it in a way where you can replicate it in other communities.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, today wouldn't be possible without my crew, my team that's got my back and is the brains behind all of this stuff. Can y'all raise your hands? Lourdes, Team SKD. If y'all have any questions, the folks that raise their hands and I will be around to sort of help answer any questions, guide you through any questions that pop up as you're hacking, give you time check, whatever else y'all need. All right, so I've got, on the official watch, I've got 1:44, so we will call it at, we'll add a minute, we'll call it at 2:45. Start hacking. Thanks.
You don't use a microwave? You don't watch TV? You don't check the TV? So think about the technology and the GPS, right? Think about the data when you have to go look on you have some sort of like school website where you have to do courses or Google Sheets, whatever. That's all technology. Right? So you can think technology isn't just programming. It's anything interfacing. Like I like how you said, it's human-centered. You want to interact with people. So there's actually domains called human-centered technology. So yes, you do technology. What do you want that's better? If it's GPA, if it's an app, if it's TV, if it's access, if it's...
I think everybody has great hopes for their websites. I know, right?
It's something you can do from your phone.
Oh, you want to see?
Older person who may not be computer savvy. Where you go?
Are y'all using Pinterest still? What apps are you guys using, right? So my daughter, 16 and 18-year-old daughters, they play with all these different technologies. But they're doing the Pinterest stories now, where you can actually, is it Pinterest or is it the one with the pictures? What's the one with the pictures?
Pinterest.
Yeah, so they got these Pinterest stories. And she was saying if you could actually hit the picture and it tells a story, or it comes on live, that would be pretty interesting. Because she was like, they share the stories in between classes when everybody's kind of bumming around in high school. You guys do any of that type of technology, divine media like that? Yeah, it's just Instagram stories. That's what it is. Instagram stories.
Yeah, because on Pinterest you can like post pictures.
But they don't talk though, right?
No. Well, on Instagram, if you post something on a story, like a video, it will like show you the audio. Sometimes where it's taken, sometimes it'll be sponsored, so it'll be stories that you don't even like follow their accounts. So yeah.
It's like the Instagram, she was saying they're Instagram novels now. During class, they have the little bits.
Yeah.
So when they get bored in class, she's like reading them. So
Yeah.
I wonder how you can integrate Instagram and learning.
I feel like for my generation, that can be a big distraction, and it also has excuse to like on their phones more when we have to learn. And so I don't mean to be cynical or anything.
Sometimes it's all about business, right?
It's kind of interesting. I hear a lot of younger people talk about technology fatigue. Or fatigue. Like they're getting tired of using technology, and technology is pulling them. And so there might be technology that helps them to get off of technology. There was.
What is it called? What, Dad?
Yeah, because there were some teenagers that I met on the metro, and they all changed their phones to black and white, so that they wouldn't spend as much time on it. Like they made a pact that they wouldn't spend as much time on their phone, and changing it to black and white was one way for them to do that.
My son's school says something in a policy this fall. No cell phone use in school at all. And they thought it was going to be like a backlash to it because some classes use it for learning.
Moms text their kids all day, right?
Yes.
So I'm just saying, actually, I had this, because right now, like we're looking at in the college level, kids are coming in and they can use Canvas and they can learn from a non-hard textbook.
Right.
And the professors really are not able to actually teach to that. But in the high schools, they actually have technologies that'll block the phones from actually working on the network.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the technology can be used, but how do the young kids are smart enough to get around it? So by the time they get to college, they're smarter than the faculty. But there's a couple things Ivory mentioned. You can actually send IMs. We call it instant messaging. Remember back in the company a long time ago before the internet, companies had their own internal internet. Right? They had instant messaging. You can actually send instant messaging through those school networks to remind them to, hey, if you're playing on your phone, please get off. Or it's time for you to study. So there's actually a specific technology that's designed
So you got the
interrupt
holistic
their
app that will help
phone
you with your
messages.
websites.
Well, they found that the students were communicating to one another more now.
It's emotionally connected.
How did I guess that's a great idea. I just wonder how the parents. I was worried about the parents calling their kids.
I want to back up just a bit because I don't know who you all are.
But this is
Alright, so my name's Mariah Dankoff.
I can take credit.
Yeah, I have a kind of Cape
I went to Eisenhower.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
We're part of an organization called World Youth Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization that helps kids like be innovative and bring in guest speakers to help develop career paths and stuff like that. I'm happening for 29 years, and I've been part of it for I think 3. So we're here on behalf of, her name is Karen Franklin. She invited us to see to come here. That's what we're all about.
You're a junior senior?
I'm a junior.
So Karen Franklin is over what organization?
World Youth Foundation.
What's that?
World Youth Foundation.
World Teen Foundation?
We're youth.
World Youth
We're
Foundation.
on there.
You familiar with her? What grade are you?
11.
So Karen is a small business owner. We can help with this.
So we're creating an app at the intersection of all three, right?
And so the program funded you all to come here?
To make a website.
Have you all been to Washington?
I went to the website.
I mean, we would give you a card, but like if we were
Well, no, send the electronic card. Send electronic contact.
So what do y'all, okay, so getting back to the policy things, right? So, okay, so if you, let's say I want to start this business, and what would you need to get started? You would need advertising support. Having to advertise, what would you need? Training, space, know-how?
I think, yeah, training because if you get like district appointed trainers or something, it wouldn't really work because they'd just kind of be going off of their own head of what they know about your business. But what my dad does is when he does hire people or when he gets hired by other companies and has contracts with them, he teaches them what he knows thoroughly to a point where they could sort of do it themselves. And it has to be to the point where they know what they're doing and they know what they're complicating. So I feel like there needs to be a well-learned team of people that know what you're for thoroughly to where they're going.
Mentorship or extra, like mentoring company or company that mentors you?
It's like a mentoring training.
You're taking this course and it's implementation into the actual. I mean, maybe that is the implementation. Well, not necessarily, because we're talking about, when you talk about diversity and technology, I sometimes only see, I don't see enough diversity. So we look at power, we look at programs to facilitate and get together. Diverse, right. So when we talk about, you make an extremely point, not into the sense of kind of like team building that program, kind of like what you do with right there with the implementation. But how do we get diverse voices? I think that's diverse. Just what we're looking at.
And I see that, but the other piece to that is coming from K-12, right? So I was an English teacher before I came to higher education, and diverse voices starts with awareness, right? So if our children are not aware of the types of things with which they can engage, exactly, then they cannot be part of the conversation because they don't know, one, what resources are out there for them to be engaged with, and then you can't even come to the table because you're not coming to the table well versed in what it is that you've been engaged with over the years.
And see, here's my point though. I have nieces and nephews, and I make them aware. But I think what part of what they're asking for us to do is, what are those resources? Those resources are lacking. So they can be as aware as apple pie. What's waiting for them to facilitate what they have to go through, or maybe part of what you're saying as an educator is the preparedness, getting them aware, having them prepared. When now we're out here, what are the resources? You know, how do we get into these organizations? To me, we're going to be talking about partnerships. To me, we're going to talk about these organizations coming into your lane and when you were an educator. You know, so That's kind of what I'm thinking about. Because this part here is about, well, what are the resources? Okay? Now we got these kids who are raring to go and excited and motivated. Their eyes starry-eyed. Are the resources there? Are they lacking? Is the money is there? Is it equitably distributed? Everyone has access to these resources.
So we have two ideas. The other piece of that is with crowdsourcing, and we see this, you're capturing information of students, right? So you can take one step further and capture email addresses, IG accounts, whatever, so that those companies can be constantly involved with the child. It's the same thing that happens in the AAU world of basketball, right? So AAU teams, as early as elementary, middle, high school, require a very specific type of brand. My team is a Nike team. My team is a Adidas team. My team is a Under Armour team. And then what happens is those kids then get enculturated to that brand and end up picking colleges that are sponsored by that brand. So if you do that even earlier, right? So you have crowdsourcing such and such app, right? So kids are growing up engaged with this app, helping solve this problem.
Right. And they're being credited with it. Right. If they're being credited with it, then they see themselves as
But
contributing.
here's a comment that I would just like to throw out there, and I'm thinking it's like a federal policy person that like used to write policy for a member. There are privacy concerns along with that, being under the age of 18. Like, how do you
There are ways to
manage?
be able to write that with parental permission.
Yeah.
There's all types of ways, because they're using so much technology in those schools right now. Like the fact that I'm using my cell phone to be able to track behavior and send it to your parent and send it to other people. Like, so there's all types of ways right now.
So I agree with you, but then my other concern, is there another way for bias to sneak into that? Because like the issue we're trying to solve here is creating diverse voices, and clearly these entities currently don't have that. There's some type of implicit bias in the system somewhere. Is there still a chance for that to
I think the
happen?
implicit bias specifically to this technology is because they don't have enough people to test it on, right? And I can only speak this because my homegirl, Emily Hand, is working on this right now in Reno, University of Nevada, Reno. And so she and I have had these conversations, and that's all it is. Like, they can't scan the diverse skin complexions because they're testing on the people who are building it in the labs. And those people don't look like us, right?
But here's my question, is that like another example of this like AI thing is that all these people have given their DNA to these like DNA collection kits that tell you your genealogy and everything else, and they like gave it away willingly, and they're like, yeah, show me I'm from such and such place, but now those companies own all of their DNA, all of their genetic like material, information exactly, and they're selling it to researchers. So I think, and the part about that I'm concerned about is that like the people who gave away their DNA ultimately don't have ownership over their genetic information, and they ultimately don't have ownership over their own image, and that's kind of the problem I'm worried about here. Is, are these kids just going to be like snapping pictures of their skin tone and snapping pictures of their face and whoever else, and giving them away, you know, to Apple? Like, I don't know that that's the solution.
So, I mean, I feel like we should leave this as an idea, because I feel like it's the most that we have right now, but we should try to think of like something else.
The first thing I thought of when I thought of this question, I thought about re-engineering. I thought about how do we re-engineering this actual product, this actual deliverable. When you look at medicine, we talk about this. When you look at prescriptions for blacks, and that they are, for example, they will have adverse things because they weren't part of the testing. It goes back to we need more people of diversity engineering and making the testing. If you go back in the 70s when they were even doing standardized testing, you know, so when you don't have, again, the voices, you know, then you're going to have people, you're going to have that bias in there, because as she was saying too, when you're going to test off of who's in the wrong testing.
But then that brings the question, like, how are you going to get the table with them?
Dr. Hand just sent her response. I sent her a screenshot, and I was like, how would you solve this problem? And so she says, diversity and inclusion needs to be the center of the conversation, not an afterthought as it usually is. She was like, there should be an inclusion teams built in the organizations that develop a set of guidelines prior to the product being made, and these guidelines can be addressed at each stage of the development process and tested during the product testing. If it isn't addressed from the onset, it will always be a bandage on the medicine.
there you go.
So is it what, like diversity? So is it maybe like incentivizing diversity quotas and stuff?
But there's also a challenge with doing that also, right? You can have a certain number of, black women.
But that doesn't,
But that doesn't necessarily say that they are being quotas and actual inclusion are two very different things.
But here's the deal. With this problem, we're not really talking about inclusion overall. We're talking about for this particular problem, how to get people to engineer this that are
Right.
now, right, inclusive voice. And this particular deliverable, thinking about right. You know what I mean? The inclusion that's a bigger
I think
thing.
I think like Black and Latino engineers, like, because the problem is public schools, and I know the diversity in charters of public schools are mostly Latino and Black. So like we need more engineers like Apple and Microsoft for developing these apps, these programs.
Because we don't want to get too big. We know for this particular assignment, we know we need people in CEOs and this and that. But for this app, which is looking at diversity, we need people that are diverse in creating, re-engineering this app.
So how do we get them there?
Thank you. So let's just stick with
So
this.
how do we get them there?
That's really the question, yes. I think exposure is part of it, but you can, and I agree, I think that going back to what you were saying, like, you can be exposed to things, but there's still like several gaps in our system that's designed to make sure that even though you've been exposed to something,
You may not comprehend or relate.
right, that
You may not have the
still,
resources.
Exactly, that you are still not allowed to, or you're still not able to enter into that space and participate.
Well, we also need to talk about who's building this app, because there are a lot of small tech firms that are trying to get involved, but they just don't know how to break in. So how do we create strategic partnerships with schools and tech firms to build this app? So that's good.
So I would say, we partnered with organizations. I know
Familiarity at the end of the day, what ties all that together.
No, I agree. I think you've got a point. And I do think like we can blend a lot of the areas that we talked about, like the focus on adults because they're going to be the most impacted by the disruption and the shift to the digital economy. And sort of like, but then I like how you talk about generationally as well. Like familiarity is it's gonna seep in a household, and you can have kids coming up who are familiar with that. Oh yeah, for sure. We've got to bring in a public-private partnership. Right. So I guess how do we distill it to a central idea? So if we're talking to like the coal mine in West Virginia, like your job's going to be in 10 years, and this is our policy to sort of make sure that you're ready for the digital economy. I guess that's where we're trying to get to and build off of that. What's that central idea that we're looking for? From all that we've heard so far.
Okay, I have a question. Yeah. So I think in doing this, I guess I stick to answering the question first and then coming up with a solution. So kind of with a simple, to me, I'm a fan of one sentence solution and then being able to do small bullet points of how to get there, but it's got to be that one sentence. So if we're going to do this, how do we answer the question? Because I think the two things I seen that came out strongest was micro-credentials that we talked about. I talked about the multi-generational focus, but the focus on is the adult group that's likely displaced, and it's rapidly displaced and impacted hardest in 10 years. And then I think later you added on about the funding. So I guess if I were to look at it, will we synopsize this? Will we look at kind of micro-credentials, target micro-credentials aimed at then will it be adults who are likely to be displaced or rapidly displaced? To answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's it.
If it's your one-line pitch, I think that's great. And then basically saying, what does that mean? So how do we put in place? And then it always comes out
So can we refine our one-line pitch into a sentence right now? Let's work to do that, and then we can go.
Dan.
So we can work and follow, because I think your solution is yours is good as a solution, but I think we have to refine it until like it's a hate to say this, like a tongue sentence.
Right.
So I guess we have to figure out like what exactly we figure out what exactly what the problem may be. Then focus in.
What do you mean as far
Like,
as?
so this is a big area.
Right.
What, like at the root of it, what is the
The disparity in digital skills between the
Yeah.
existing workforce and the future communities.
And I think the answer that we're getting at is the micro-credentials targeted at adult learning programs and adults who are most likely impacted.
Micro-credentials targeted at.
Micro-credentials targeted with, they have like diversity recruiters when they go to certain schools. They have, for example, Howard just has their Google campuses they're giving in LA that has that. So they have they take their software engineer for a semester and go and have them teach at HBCU for a semester. Some of those programs already exist, but I think especially on the college level, but how do we even, before we get there, because at that point we already know that they're behind, so they're already there, and that's why that's why all these initiatives exist, because they're trying to play catch up. So how do we take it a step back before we get there? And I think that goes more to like your point about the changing the policy of employment. Like if we remove that college barrier to have access to these jobs, how can someone go from high school to Google without having college be a factor in that?
They know the job. They know the work. They know the work. The technical skills.
Yeah.
They have the training
Yeah.
to do that. And sometimes they're self-taught, self-trained in order to get there. So it's the experience that's the barrier.
Yeah.
So we need to find a way to
internships.
Put that into the policy. But internship comes with college.
No,
everybody
doesn't have to. That's where we come in.
But there are also certificate programs.
Yeah.
Like when ITT went out of business nationally, our college started a coding academy, working with another PWI in Arkansas, and so we have every 8 weeks we have a coding academy where they learn the skills they would have gotten in ITT, and when they finish they get a certificate. But there are only like 4 campuses out of all the campuses in Arkansas that are offering that. We're in the city. The rest of them are in more rural
Can we
parts
have
of
that?
town.
Can we implement a coding academy in high school? And when they graduate, they come in with a certificate.
Right, because it's a certificate program.
Yeah,
Sure you could.
The high schools also have within their own walls trade schools within the high school.
I thought you looked familiar. Okay. I used to live in Okay.
We partnered with Apple, and we're doing it. We offer some training, some coding camps.
Okay.
Now Birmingham City School.
So incentivize them to offer more coding academies and experiences like
that's
that.
just one market. We're talking about something that will diversify all So we're just looking at a solution. If it's working in the coding academy and the IT industry, then what will it be effective in other industries? And then look for people who have the skill set, right? So what can we do to change the employment laws in order to impact diversity?
And incentivize the employers then to attend to those laws to increase the diversity.
Fearless leader. I'm sorry? I call you our leader.
I'm just they do have inside, within the high school walls, at least in the DC area, trades school within the school. So they say have the Penn Center and of course Bell still exists. Those things. So in those areas, high school, people was taking trades within them. They didn't have to go to college. They picked up those trades and took off and got their careers that way. And so some of them are still doing it, these charter schools.
And the technical side of the graduation requirements and then the college prep. Something I thought would be interesting in terms of businesses being able to implement policy. If they completely throw away the old practice of we send out a job description, you send us your resumes, we get a check, and in that is so much bias and what have you. And if they just transition to purely a skill-based thing, like if you go in and see a job, it's for whatever, and then you take a test. If you pass that test, that's it.
And so they also have what you call fellow programs. And fellow programs is an extension of trade. And what they do, well, they sort of replace trade. Sort of. So what they do is in the fellow programs, they say, we want you to do this program for 3 months. And in that 3-month period, we're teaching you A, B, C, D, F, G. And you get this certificate at the end of it. And at the end of it, they put you into a job that you got that skill set from.
Yeah, they have a lot of
And it's a lot in technology. And
so if we could, there's been a lot of great ideas that's thrown out. Unfortunately, we have to kind of narrow down something to present. So, does anything jump out as being super? I mean, all of them could be impactful, but something that just rally around.
I guess the big case churches overall larger than that's what I teach from. We're going to take you, put you in summer in this program, put you in the classroom and teach. But also, like it or not, it was solving that supply gap, right? And so a supply gap in blacks in tech, I have to retrain people to get into tech. And so you got certification programs for people to learn R and Python. There's Blue 1647 or Blue Lacuna out of Chicago. Started there, but it has coding classes in St. Louis and housing projects in New York and Haiti, teaching even ex-offenders coding programs, doing design work and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's investing in that helps it out. So but it's just like any other thing, right? You put money there, people will come because I get an apprenticeship, I get a job, I get paid to be there.
I guess I'm just missing it because when I got my math degree, I went out to look for a job as a math teacher. Every school in the districts in Texas was there were just gaps with math teachers. So how do you get non-technical? Really, because like sometimes you say it's about the money, but there are like hundreds of data scientist positions open right now. And if I could find a data scientist, a black data scientist, I could hire them today, but you don't have them in the field.
So you have to put money out there to create more data scientists. So if someone said right now you can get your student loans forgiven if you taught math in this place, I would go do it because I'm a lawyer. I have a math degree too. I'm a lawyer now. It's like, I'm gonna do that for a couple of years just because the money's there. So there's a sales program for that. I'm not in tech. I'm quasi in tech. I'm not teaching tech now because it's not lucrative for me. I get paid to do more. But if someone flipped that and said, create an incentive program for someone to maybe get out of whatever they're doing to get into tech teaching, to get into help, or to get into tech field in general. It's bridging the program. I mean, you're just in a weird self-selected group. Like, you don't need that incentive to do that because you're in it anyway.
I guess I wonder because like our company, we offer data scientists $150,000 to start, and I still can't get people, even at $150K, to say I'm gonna go learn math, I'm gonna go learn statistics, and come and join this field.
But it's like, but how are you approaching these students for them to understand, that if you study this field, you're going to be making money? Because at the end of the day, people's passions are not going to disappear regardless of, the amount of money that you're giving them. So it's mostly about how you're targeting students and how these programs are being advertised to the students. You may have a lot more students, whether it's out of school. I'm unaware about all of these programs that allow me to, get student loans forgiveness. So I think, maybe we should come from a business standpoint and trickle down all the way down to education and how we can branch it off with the students.
From your side, that's the problem. It's that these fields pay a lot of money, but black people are interested in it. And you're saying they should be,
I'm saying that based up on
The question we're trying to answer is how do you incentivize them to be? You're saying it shouldn't be an incentive because they already paid $150. That's not enough incentive.
it's not enough.
You got to bridge the gap. Sometimes it's the incentive to get you motivated, but also bridging that gap to make sure I have the access and resources
People
to it.
passions don't go away.
So it's not just I need to know I want to do this because it makes a lot of money. It's that I want to do this and I have the means and the ability to do it here.
It's like in a way, like, since like in the black community, a lot of like, black children, when they're not aware of like, the tech firms, STEM or education, they know about entertainment. So how are they aware about the entertainment and what they're seeing on the television because it's being popularized? So just more so, trying to like make it look in a like, in a crazy way, make it sexy, make it like, okay, well, 150.
And this circle back to what we said before. We should first be using social media to target a large section of the population, and then maybe integrate free software, free means, online sources to complement the
I mean, like, we
education.
can, that create, like, a point within the policy, but, like, the overall policy shouldn't be solely on, advertising these different programs within social media.
Back to you, where I think what's being left out is that sure we want to advertise and we want people to go, oh, this is cute and we want to be interested. But when you get down to it, when you learn robotics, because most of the time them hires from college, they know stuff, but then they don't actually know the stuff. It's like, you don't know calculus. So when I'm trying to design an algorithm and I want you to be in this field, you don't actually know anything.
Linear algebra, just something basic. You don't have like basic skill sets, right? So like you said before, you gotta start early, you gotta start young, you gotta get them incentivized and want to learn it. You gotta have their passion, you gotta have their purpose. You just can't just throw stuff at people, expect them to do it. Data science, you hear data science, like, what is that, right?
I think it's a problem in the community where you ask any black person, black man, and most black people go, I hate math. They don't want to do it. And so you got to change that misperception because the STEM field is centered around mathematics.
So we've seen a drop in, I think there were, I know Purdue used to have a bunch of these some engineering programs from minorities. They don't have that funding available right now. We created more funding for that where I know in the summer program, I have summer intensive classes where I'm on a university campus learning engineering, putting that back into the communities where it was. We stripped a lot of that away. We have high stakes testing now, so they spend most of the time in remedial stuff and not necessarily learning what they should be, right? Our high ability programs, all those things are sort of lost. I think we did a reasonable job of that in the 90s, but since then we sort of switched, the education space sort of switched and we have some other focuses now. But putting money back into communities where our people are and having them focus on STEM education, product creation, light manufacturing, like machine learning, like these sort of things could be in middle schools, elementary schools at a very young age. We just don't have the money to do it because we stripped funding from education.
Let me ask you something. You're ATT, right? And think about this. We talk about technology and how we're going to implement this, right? 5G is rolling out soon, right? How do we implement? Think about 5G and how that's going to affect. The main thing it's going to affect is what? That mobile, right? It's going to affect mobile in a tremendous way. It's going to transform mobile technology.
Y'all, you got 25 minutes left. You might want to start thinking about populating.
So that's what most kids are, right? The mobile phone, right? They're on their phones. 5G is going to transform that whole industry. Right? We got VR and AR coming out. That's going to have a lot to do with that data, right? And one of my ideas was to have the virtual classroom, right? Have the virtual classroom with 5G rolling out, right? So everything can be remote. You don't have to be physically located in a job anymore, right? You can do it virtually, right? So the teachers actually can do virtual right from their home during the summer months. They don't have to go physically go to a job, right? So they can work for 3 months to make the $30,000 remotely from their house, right? That's what I'm saying. That was my theory, right? That was my process. I'm thinking about the 5G, right? And virtual internships, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm saying that was how I came up with the idea. So what do you think about that in terms of that perspective? Because that's technology too.
The thing is, I'm for all the solutions. I'm trying to figure out how do you incentivize people to do that? Like, for me, it's just,
but you know what? It's like Coach Teach for America. You know, you get your loans forgiven once you teach 2 years in a public school. Right? don't know who pays them, but it gets paid off. It gets paid off. It gets paid off after 2 years in public school.
If you're gonna draft legislation to say how to incentivize programs, it's student loan forgiveness for blacks in tech. It's student loan forgiveness of teaching.
All of the laptops and PowerPoints, asking the judges to please come and take your places on the stage. Teams, you can continue to practice your presentation while we get everything organized here. We will start the presentations between 2:50 and 2:55. Intellectual lift for all of us. I know y'all didn't think you're going to show up to Black Caucus and have to do work, but I appreciate the sweat equity each team put into coming up with their ideas. Before we get started with the presentations, I'm going to go down the row and ask our distinguished panel of judges to introduce themselves, starting with our host, Congressman Vesey.
Yeah. Hi, Mark Vesey, Congressman for the 33rd Congressional District, and great to be with you and looking forward to seeing some of the work here. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. Denise Wilson. I worked on Capitol Hill for 27 years and 3 years in the White House in the Office of Legislative Affairs for Congress for President Obama, and I have been working with a group called Co-Equal. We provide oversight tools for the effective use of Congress, and we are working with them to do their job and provide our expertise to them, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Denzel Singletary. I did about 5 years on Capitol Hill with Senator Gillibrand and joined eBay to do global policy in 2018. Thank you.
Hi, Aaron Moore here, Government Relations Specialist with LinkedIn. I cover all of our House engagements and was a participant last year. Happy to be a judge this year. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Roz Brooks. I'm the U.S. Public Policy Leader for PricewaterhouseCoopers, or PwC, so I basically head our government office for federal, state, and local government affairs.
Good afternoon, my name is Jay Cho. I'm Manager of Federal Government Affairs for Verizon. Prior to that, I spent about 5 years on the Hill working for Congresswoman Robin Kelly. I want to thank Congressman Vesey and Dell. I worked with Dell a lot on this specific issue when I was on the Hill, and I'm just honored to be up here and continuing to work on it. I'm excited to hear your ideas.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Green. I'm General Manager of Upstream IT for Chevron. So that means I have responsibility for our worldwide operations of information technology for upstream, which is where we look for, find, produce oil and gas. I was also a participant last year and am happy to be a judge this year.
Thanks, y'all. And I'll be your MC this afternoon. My name is Chris Turner. I'm with Dell Technologies. Happy to be doing this for the second year in a row. Again, I love the energy that this event draws. I love the ideas that it kicks out, and you can see we've got a full room of people that rolled up their sleeves willing to work, and we've got judges that have been engaged in this process for a minute and came back wanting to judge all of y'all. With that, I'll remind everyone that each team is going to have 5 minutes to present. I'll be running a tight clock to make sure that everything's fair. Then the judges will be able to pose 4 questions to each team, total, not per judge, and you will have 1 minute to respond to each question. After that, the judges will get together and pick a winner. Sound good? All right, with that, I invite team number 1 to make their way to the microphone by the entrance. And if you could give a brief intro, I won't start the clock running. Give a brief introduction to yourselves, the 30-second version, not the 2-minute version, along with an overview of your topic. And after you finish the overview, reading your topic, I'll start the clock.
All
All right, so we'll do our introduction first.
Yeah, brief introduction.
All right, so we'll do an introduction each. So my name is Jeremy Lawson. I'm a senior data scientist for a cybersecurity firm, and I'm also the past president of the Maryland Black Caucus Foundation.
I am Andrea Rebra. I'm a grad student at the George Washington University, and I'm specializing in cybersecurity and technology.
Hi, my name is Randy Wilkins. I'm CEO and president of the Digital Enterprise Academy here in DC. I teach cybersecurity and STEM subjects at DC Public Schools.
Good afternoon. I am Richard Leverett. I am a state and local government external affairs director for AT&T in Indiana. Before that, I was chief of staff for the mayor of Gary, Indiana, and worked on operations there for about 4 years.
Good afternoon. My name is Stacy Desgranges. I'm a recent graduate from George Mason University with my master's in public policy. I'm currently a consultant at a small consulting firm in DC over at FEMA.
All right, so our problem is that the lack of African-American representation in tech means that many of the best and brightest basically are not in the industry. And so how can we help the CBC utilize technology to best mobilize the next generation of black leaders? I myself, in my own industry, I think I only know of only one other black professional that is a data scientist. And so I really don't see us in the room. Can we go to the next slide? So we basically have a two-part solution. The first is creating technological awareness by targeting the millennial population in major urban cities by leveraging social media and online sources. So what this means is that just like you have ad campaigns that target, if you have Facebook, Twitter, you have promoted ads. And so what we can do is create like a behavioral ad campaign for students and anyone who we would want to become interested in STEM. We can target them specifically, and specifically our communities, and basically generate that persuasion technique to get them interested in actual STEM jobs. So the second solution, I'll let you jump in here.
All right, so the way we approached this was sort of a supply and demand. First, it was getting the demand up, that we didn't have enough blacks in tech because there was not an interest or people didn't know about things, and so that's what this part covered. On the supply side, we tried to figure out how do we get companies incentivized to invest in these areas, and we had a bunch of solutions around the table. And the way we sort of figured this out is everyone's heard of opportunity zones. No one really knows how they work necessarily, but people are trying to figure it out now. We're trying to figure out if we had a tech opportunity zone sort of overlay where you could get more tax credits or expanding tax credits on state and local levels for investing in hard and soft infrastructure. So it's increasing broadband access in areas, Cleveland, Chicago, places like that, and also looking at job training and skills programs where you invest in programs within these particular districts, you get more credits for doing so there. And so that program, to create the sort of supply for the jobs and the training programs, matched with the demand that we have from a social media outreach to sort of make tech cool and make tech accessible for the black community. Those two things sort of mesh together what we felt would be the solution for the program. So it's one piece of social media marketing, one piece of legislation blended together.
Next slide. So how will this be adopted? I think from my minimal experience that you would have federal and state legislation put in place on that level, and then you go down to public and private entities, right, where we thought that, hey, maybe you could have tax incentives for companies to reach out through our social media targeting to where these people could go into companies through some type of apprenticeship program. They could learn a skill, and then they could take it back to the classroom and teach students. And when we go into education, well, maybe you have salary increases. Maybe you give some type of student loan relief to where they learn a skill, they take it to the classroom, they get the relief, and basically you're filling gaps. You already have a gap in education where you don't have enough math and STEM people there. So you get people to come back into the classroom, and then I think you have another gap where you have people want to make more money, and so that's why they leave education and go into the corporate. That's what I did. I taught for 3 years, and then I left education, went into corporate because they offered way more money, but we also want to look to give back. So create that incentive to go and learn it and then go in and give it back. Next slide. How does this solution scale? From the technological piece, we target small communities
basically to create a sample size. So we started in Baltimore. We would pick, I think one city or area is like Druid Hill Park. And so you start there and you basically start sending targeted messages to the kids, not just to the kids, to everyone, because you want anyone and everyone who's interested in STEM, interested in making more money, interested in relief, to be interested enough to go and apply somewhere. And so we create a sample size. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we can refine the solution. It's almost like a Scrum methodology. And then you can start, 1 minute. All right. We can set a certain set of milestones. From those milestones, we can start to scale up. And not just Baltimore, because every city is different, but our problems are generally the same. So if we can figure out what the milestones are, we can start creating a scalable solution. I think that's it. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, judges, we can ask Team 1 4 questions, and as a reminder, they will be given a minute to respond to each question.
Any particular order?
No, please.
You can go ahead and I'll go.
Just have a quick question about the data that you guys will be using for this. This is supposed to be a realistic solution, and it sounds to me like you guys are going to need a lot of granular data going neighborhood by neighborhood if you want to start small. And so I guess my question to you is, where is this data coming from? How can you be sure that you guys are targeting the right neighborhoods and the right communities? Just because one block has access to a lot of broadband doesn't necessarily mean that the block over does.
Right. So from an investment standpoint, looking at broadband data is just one, but it's also the number of tech jobs available, the workforce development dollars, the unemployment rate you have in those areas, and it allows you to have different solutions there. So we didn't want to have, and we had several solutions around the table, as I said, but we didn't want to have one uniform solution for every community. So some communities would look at any form of data to judge like where that tech gap and skills gap was, and any investment towards that would qualify for the credits in that space. So if it's broadband access, if one part of Cleveland may look different, may look similar from an economic standpoint as a part of Chicago, but Chicago might have 80% broadband adoption rates, and Cleveland might have 35%, and AT&T Verizon, we know the numbers, right? But that's what you're looking at. So they might have two different solutions for those places, but the program still works the same regardless from an investment standpoint.
Next question.
First off, I think it's great that we have so many folks in the technical field talking about this. I feel like if anybody knows what this issue looks like, it's you all. My question is, I know you talked about targeting millennials. Is there a reason why millennials are who you want to target and why you didn't want to start younger? I feel like a lot of time exposure is an issue, especially in minority communities. I know that when I talk about lobbying or government relations, a lot of folks back at home in Buffalo don't really know about that field, so therefore they're not interested in it. So just wanted to know why you guys wanted to start with millennials.
The research shows that most students drop out of an interest in STEM between 10 and 14. That's where most minorities drop out. That's where most women drop out, between 10 and 14. So we wanted to target where we get the biggest bang for our buck, right at the millennials, right? And of course, you can always increase it to include younger, or you include a little bit of older. And also, you can always tweak it, but we wanted to start at the most, area that we think it affects it the most.
Yep, please.
Did you all talk about partnering with organizations that are already out there that are focused on this? It seemed like this was kind of a completely start over. But was there any talk about, partnering with an organization like a NSBE or others that are already working in this space?
From a partnership standpoint, we tried to make it as open as possible because from different geographic areas from around, we all had partner programs and funders that we had worked with. And so we felt like from social media side, that approach and the dollars available there anyone could use those programs. And on the same side, on the investment side, anyone could get credit for a program. And so we just didn't want to have one labeled out there, whether it was NSBE or Inside Engineers, Black Engineers focused on anything, or even smaller groups like, I'm familiar with Blue 1647 out of Chicago that's doing things on the south side there. I mean, you can't focus on one type of overlay, but we want to make it accessible to everyone. Anyone can sort of invest.
And I think the reason we wanted something different and novel, and so I don't know of any programs or companies that are specifically targeting the Black community through social media in this way to get them interested in jobs. So it's like that behavioral targeting, building algorithms to do that. I know we build algorithms to do different things, but I don't know of it specifically to do this.
Time. One more question? You stumped him. Great job, Team 1. And I think next we've got team number 2.
How do we adjust this? Because we can't.
So introduction first?
Yeah, please. Introductions, and then you can give the read through your topic, and I'll start the clock running after you read through your topic.
Okay. My name is Esmeralda Garcia. I'm a junior at Harmony School of Discovery, and I'm with the World Youth Foundation.
My name is Winter Brooks. I attend the Rhodes School for the Performing Arts, and I'm also with the World Youth Foundation.
My name is Mariah Deaka. I go to HSPBA, which is a performing and visual arts school. I major in creative writing in Houston, Texas, and I'm also with the World Youth Foundation. Yeah. Okay, so our prompt was basically to see how the Small Business Administration could help better support small minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs innovate and expand their companies to their technology adoption. So we took this as we need to implement some kind of program, not only for just small companies, but for everyone who needs to start out doing something. And while they have the funds, they don't exactly have the management or the advertisement that they need to get started. So we focused on implementing a program in high schools and places that need these programs implemented to not only get funding, but to expand everything in general.
Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Who's doing the slides? Oh, next slide. Next slide. Then next slide. Okay, so our idea was Technotown. So the purpose of it was to educate students at a high school level on how to develop their future businesses or companies. And it's also an environment for students to innovate and experiment with new ideas. So how it was different, our idea is different because there isn't a program or foundation like this that targets students at a high school level.
Let me see. Explain Technotown.
Next slide, please. Next slide. How will this be adopted? As you can see, it's not an app. You can't just download it. And generally, the reason why small businesses struggle is because people don't have knowledge. And so our idea was to send people from SBA to high schools, maybe even 8th grade. And is anybody familiar with BizTown? Does anybody know what that is? BizTown is basically junior achievement. It's a place where they have businesses such as Chick-fil-A and Reliant, and you get like elementary kids and middle school to go over there and act like they're running the business, but they don't do that anymore for like 8th grade and up. And so basically helping high school students with starting a business and their careers. So sending people from SBA to high schools and influencing the students and helping them with developing their careers. Also starting a place where you can have workshops and similar to BizTown except for a higher level.
It's more STEM based than it is like, entrepreneur stuff. So next slide. So this solution scales because we were planning to train the framework for Technotown, and one way we were going to do that is how people get on board with other people's businesses is that they need to, like, people that they hire need to be disciplined and, like, trained on the certain discipline that they are targeting in their business. So we wanted to train that kind of framework in Technotown. That could be one of the workshops that you get into. Another thing we wanted to do is how to get this early and infiltrated in, like, teachers and stuff, was to get them on board with what we call like a dual education system, because students who do want to get involved in STEM programs and programs outside of the school or extracurricular activities in general are too worried about finishing their other homework or being concerned with their other classes. So what we wanted to do was, when we get the districts on board, hopefully, that these teachers will let them go to places like Technotown to further their career in STEM while also finishing their academic homework, so that they don't have to worry about like an overpile of academic homework while they try to pursue a career in STEM. So we want to pitch this idea to school districts, for example, HISD, like in Houston, Texas, software companies who are willing to take in these students as interns, like, you know, after the age of 8th grade. But we want to pitch this idea to main companies and schools so that they let these students who do want to have a career in STEM, let them do that. Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, judges.
Okay, so I appreciate, like, Technotown sounds like someplace I probably need to go, or need to go presently. But so to that point, I was wondering, did you guys have any discussion about, I understand the application to 8th graders and high school students in terms of future entrepreneurs, but for those existing kind of small business, minority-owned firms or groups, would it be scalable, or did you have discussion about how you would get them kind of as well up to speed?
So Technotown would be open to anyone in the STEM area. We just wanted to recruit 8th graders and up because we wanted to expose them to opportunities as well. But, you know, small businesses that, of course, need more networking opportunities and more advertising opportunities can come to Technotown to get disciplined in more framework and to further their company as well. Yes.
Yeah, my question was very similar. So I work at eBay. We just launched a program called Retail Revival, where we're going into depressed retail markets and helping small businesses get onto the platform. And so this kind of reminded me of that, but kind of more so pipeline. And so what I thought about was, as you guys are talking about working with more students, maybe including current businesses in that plan, and having more of like maybe a mentorship program. So that way kind of everyone is benefiting from it.
Yes, because like the whole point is to further STEM careers. So if the professionals want to engage in that, like, there's no reason to deny them.
Right.
So, yeah.
I guess, did you talk about, so for Technotown, you talked about having folks come in and learn about how to set up businesses. I think the challenge question was also about how do you use technology to drive businesses. So did you talk about that at all and how that would be part of your curriculum?
Yeah.
So we talked about that. I was actually kind of worried about that because at first I wasn't too sure. But take my mom, for example. She's trying to start a business, but she didn't have any knowledge on coding and developing a website. So I feel like SBA and anybody who is coming in to teach the students, or anybody, small business owners and stuff like that, teaching them those sorts of things could actually help with advertisement and getting their business up to where it needs to be.
I think we can have one more question.
I was just going to say, do you guys know if SBA has any sort of similar programs currently?
No.
At all.
right, team 3. As a reminder, team 3, if you can all introduce yourselves and then read us through your prompt, after which I will start the clock. And if you look at me, I'll put my hand up when you've got a minute left.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Erin Lynch.
Hello, I'm Maddie Schumacher. I manage policy at one of the nation's oldest Asian Pacific American civil rights organizations.
Hi, my name is Josephina Musa, and I'm with Leadership for Educational Equity. I'm an educator currently in the classroom.
Great.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Woody. I'm currently a graduate student at the Graduate School of Political Management at GW.
Hi, my name is Latricia Folks. I'm currently a doctoral candidate working on my PhD in managing cyber terrorism, and I'm an executive director of a cloud innovation company.
Hello, I'm Priscilla Barber, the Senior Manager of Federal and State Advocacy for Vistra Energy. We're the nation's largest residential retail electric provider and generator of electricity.
So since we're giving creds, I'm the Associate Provost of Scholarship Research and Innovation at Winston-Salem State University. He's going to drop our creds. Let's go there. I'll do that too. So our issue is confronting AI bias with diversity. Oh, are we going to read the issue?
Yeah, but it wasn't included in your presentation deck. Do we have another? Can you read it for us?
Yeah. Did you pause our time?
Yep.
Okay.
So I got my 4 minutes. Look at where the money is.
Yeah.
You guys are team 3?
3, yes.
It should mention like soap dispensing.
Yep, so given the implicit bias in the
want to do it in the
programming...
microphone?
Thank you. Given the implicit bias in the programming of autonomous technology, i.e. autonomous cars that cannot see individuals with darker complexion, soap dispensers that do not dispense soap, for individuals with darker complexion, and facial recognition software that mistakes minority members of Congress for convicted criminals, data collected by cities. And data collected by cities to be used for smart cities technology. How can we facilitate diverse voices and individuals being given employment opportunities with organizations that create technology that run these programs?
Yes. So our solution, right? Okay. So our idea is to actually build an app. And you're all, okay, another app? Okay, but this one's different. This one's innovative. So what we want to be able to do with our app is kind of like what the MIT team did with the DARPA challenge. You use crowdsourcing to be able to solve problems. So what our app would actually do is to engage students from elementary, middle, high, all the way through, and over the course of their engagement in the app, they get to do like trivia stuff that's related to STEM, and then over that time period, they get to build out their own avatar profile. So what this one does is they take a picture of themselves to build out their avatar. Now you're collecting all the information for the complexities of our skin tones so that you've built a crowdsourcing way of collecting all this data, because that's the problem. Those people are not in the labs. So now we're actually capturing that information so that the people who aren't in the labs are able to give their information in the labs. But the second component to that is as they're engaging with this app and they're sharing it out with their friends, they're acquiring credits. So y'all remember the bubble gum when you collect all the wrappers and you turn it in for credits? So we want our tech companies to actually contribute to paying for internships, micro-credentials, scholarships, summer programs. So the kids who are participating in this app accrue credits, bubblegum wrappers. They then turn in those credentials over time to be able to participate with the companies. The app is collecting the information of these children so that we can longitudinally track them and their engagement in STEM. And then it's all incentivized to be able to connect all of our children to the actual industry. Next slide.
So our solution is novel and different. So it builds upon already existing co-curricular programs that combine STEM and diversity for public and charter schools. It also creates a pathway. So I think our main focus is really trying to make sure that we have a strong functioning STEM pipeline that could begin as early as pre-K and could exist all the way up until students are in college and beyond participating in the workforce. So this would be applicable to create pathways for vocational and technical training outside of the four-year college system, but it would also allow for students to earn credits that they could then use to earn credits while they're in schooling for higher education. So ages with cohorts are not tied to institutions. So if there is an institution that wants to participate solely with students in pre-K, they would be able to do that and really find that niche group. If there's an institution that wants to participate with students who are older in age, so high school, middle-aged students, they would be able to do that and then really hone in on the talents of those students and work specifically with those kids.
Next slide. So the policy component to this app is that we would need support from the Department of Education, okay? And so the same way the Department of Education supports iPads and collecting that data, so this database would have to be maintained somewhere, okay? So how the kids are getting their credits, how long they've been engaged, what geographic area, are they living in, what grade level, all these things, so that almost like iPads, you can go in and pull specific information. So industries now have the opportunity to pull specific information of kids who have been longitudinally engaged in this app, who've also contributed to solving the problem of not having faces of color in the lab. So now we've solved that, and we've got a pipeline, and we've gotten kids engaged because they have the ability to, the incentive system to actually get them to do the internships and things with the companies who are trying to recruit them and attract them.
And really quickly, so something that's also important to note is that it gives schools the freedom of choice, right? So we have the option of co-curricular programming or total curricular adoption per school district. And so we know that with total curricular adoption, that would probably be a longer implementation progress. And some schools may not want to do that because it's a little bit more tedious. Then they have the option of that co-curricular programming, working closely with companies, but still having the same outcome, the same product.
Next slide. Okay, all right. So the way that we bring this scale, we kind of already mentioned that, thanks, 1 minute, is the Department of Ed, we need their support to be able to help maintain the database of the children who are actually engaged in this so that companies can then go and pull out that information for the entire process.
Thank you.
I'm still there. Yeah.
So as you know, YouTube. Serious talk. Apologies. You know that YouTube had to pay, I think, $157 million something for collecting data on children. So how do you look to scale fast enough to aggregate the data enough where you're not giving away any personally identifying information on children?
Yeah, so the only personal identifying information would really just be the stuff that their parents already approve, right? So like my kids are engaged and I have a 15 and 14-year-old, right? And so they have apps that request my email information and the codes that come to my phone that I have to type in for them to get access to the app. So we would use our tech people, that's not our area. Team 2, we would get our tech people to be able to work all that stuff in so the safeguards are in place so that we could protect that information.
I was going to say, additionally, just like from the educator's perspective, like every school has to sign like privacy release forms for children, and that's parent-based and based on parent choice. And so we would also have that level of protection in that aspect to make sure that our kids' identities are not being transferred to whoever, and that we're also using the data accordingly. Yeah.
And that's also why the data is being managed and maintained by the Department of Education, because they are legally responsible for protecting the security of those children.
So that's a good role for members of Congress to ensure that the Department of Education is actually protecting that material. Bring you into this, because yeah, that would be, from a congressional oversight standpoint, that would be critical and key, because you have to safeguard the children.
Exactly, yes.
And just have you all thought about how to incentivize parents to opt into this? And kind of what way is it, like, why would parents want to be a part of this.
Right, so let's be real. I don't like paying private school tuition. I really am not going to look forward to paying college tuition. So with the companies already putting, their social benefit foundations funding toward other things, if they can start putting it towards this, we're looking at actually paying for scholarships, paying for internships that parents can't necessarily pay for our children to do. So the financial benefit is there, that now your child is being engaged and exposed to things that you might not ordinarily be able to afford.
Hill internships, unpaid Hill internships.
They're no longer unpaid.
Also, coming from a Chinese American background, I would say that my parents would be very invested in me, getting into the STEM field early on.
And then also corporations can use this as a way to do CSR initiatives. So just like they do green projects, they can also invest in public school opportunities to give grants and also pathways for training and certifications.
So I was going to ask something along those lines, you're talking about how would you get parents to opt in, how would you get all tech companies to, this sounds like, they should want to in terms of the pressure that exists already and kind of a way of mitigating, but how do you really get them to opt in? Is it some kind of incentive or initiative on a policy perspective, you do this and,
So, and then I'm going to pass the mic to our policy. But the bottom line is the tech companies are already doing things to use their money in a socially beneficial way, right? So this now has the social benefit, but it also has the way of you recruiting, right, much, much earlier. So that money you're spending to put all those targeted ads in neighborhoods, right, to create these television ads, you just put it this way and you're developing that pipeline much, much earlier. Policy, go.
And then I can also, on the policy side, but also from a private industry, we're dealing with workforce challenges that this directly addresses. So we know that the STEM community, the technology community is
well
aware, and they have challenges because a lot of their employees are from immigrants and from other countries, and we have issues currently with our leadership, if that's what we want to call it. And so they're trying to find ways to educate the workforce potential here in the United States. My industry, energy, is a graying workforce. We don't have enough people coming into the workforce.
Time.
Sorry.
By my count, that was 4 questions. Is that fair? I counted 4. Was it a question, a follow-up, and 2 questions? We'll do one more question.
So I had one, because you're I understand the targeting of children to fill the pipeline. I guess from a facial recognition.
We just can't hear you well.
Oh, sorry. So from a facial recognition standpoint, we obviously all know that we change as we age. So did you talk about that, and would there be any implications of just collecting that facial recognition from children, and how that would really truly impact the AI to not be non-diverse?
Right, so to be specific to the actual prompt we were given, it explicitly talked about skin complexion. Okay. And so we understand, those of us of color, we understand we go through different seasons, right? Okay. But we were hoping that through that crowdsourcing piece.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Black don't crack.
Okay. But we were hoping through that crowdsourcing piece that you would get enough diversity of complexions that we can solve that problem of why the AI is not recognizing all the different levels of complexions that we have.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I think that's actually one of the great things about the system that we have proposed, is that we are just proposing like a database, a collection, a variety that we are not seeing currently in the field of AI, that we'd then be able to track and then see the continual growth and progress of that data that we've collected. So I think that, instead of viewing it as a potential pitfall, I think it could be actually one of our strongest points here. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you. Team 4. All right, right, Team 4, same rules apply. Introduce yourselves, read us or give us the overview of your prompt. At that point, I'll start the clock. 5 minutes. Look to me, I'll give you 1 minute, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Javier Lewis. I am a recovering accountant. I spent the first 5 years of my career in that field. Ms. Rossbrooks, you will appreciate this, working for one of your competitors, Deloitte. And now I am a graduate student at George Washington University in Public Relations.
Good afternoon. I am Kimberly Levy. I'm the Director of Institutional Research and an Assistant Professor of Biology at Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee.
Good afternoon. My name is Jimmy Williams. I'm the president of the Washington Literacy Center located here. I am an ex-government relations person, recovering still.
Hello, I am Eric Moten. I am a defense fellow. I'm currently at George Washington University studying legislative affairs.
Good afternoon. Maya Troop, also an Army Defense Fellow at George Washington University.
Good afternoon. My name is Thurman Jones. I'm with the Patriots Technology Training Center. We work with 5th to 12th grade students to get them in STEM, Lego, cybersecurity, biomedical, and we are an SB chapter member.
Poet and Lords, would you mind reading our prompt for us? I think we left it off the final. Apologies. Team 4.
All right, so it is in the upcoming decades, there will be new job creation that requires a digital transformation where digital skills will be needed to fill careers of the future. This will change how the workforce learns, creates, and develops ideas. It would also create a skill gap with the existing workforce. How can governments and businesses work together to boost opportunities for the existing and new workforce in the rapidly changing digital economy for disadvantaged individuals and communities? That was a long one.
Thank you. So as we started looking at this problem, the first thing that we thought about, how would we explain this to the coal miner in West Virginia or the car worker in Lordstown, Ohio, who's facing rapid displacement off their job by the shift to the digital economy. So our idea is bridging that digital divide using micro-credentials targeted at adults who are rapidly becoming displaced in the existing and new workforce. Next slide. So what is our solution? We're going to create a comprehensive program of micro-credentials. Those programs already exist in various forms, but what has not happened is a rapid deployment, and that has not been data informed. We're going to do that through public-private partnerships with states, the municipalities, the companies, and NGOs that already work in this space. Next slide.
So, workforce development, novel idea. So the thing is, how do we intend to do it? First of all, we realize that there's a need for data. So we want to leverage existing U.S. Census data to develop a comprehensive heat map. But it's not just U.S. Census data, it's education data, it's weakness, unemployment, most recent data that they have outlining the areas that are most at risk for displacement. That database would be created and maintained using accessible public and private partnerships. We also noticed that even though the Department of Education maintains a digital literacy program, there's not an active component. It's a passive component, which means that if you're running a nonprofit, there is nothing to coalesce and identify the need. And so we saw that as a weakness. And so in developing the heat maps and the focus on data, we want to create a database that you're not required, that you don't just go and subscribe to the database and that it's not connected to funds, it's not connected to any centralized data. We recognize that there's still a lack of data for this information for this. And we're also noticing that adults specifically, that for every 10 years that adults become really removed from the digital divide widens. So we want to narrow that. One, because we took a generational approach by recognizing that if there's an educational digital connection in the household, we're able to start reducing that gap. One, because the education has been provided in 2 generations. So we're targeting the adult and and older generations, ages 30 and over, who are becoming displaced, and also creating a nexus where a younger generation is also able to do it by allowing an adult who's already somewhat familiar with digital literacy. Next slide. So, scaling. How do we scale it? So we start out that we mentioned earlier that this is a 5-year pilot program. Year 1 would be the most important part of the program. We would aim at start in 2 areas: a high-density urban area model by using the demographics that I mentioned earlier, and a low-density rural area within year 1, so we'll have some comparatives. But it's a public-private partnership, so we know that these things have to be funded. We also know there has to be a repository for information. One thing we didn't mention is that we mentioned that there would be a commission either housed within the Department of Education or something that would be launched on the Congressional level, or something that's outside of the Congressional level, or a connection of all three. Next slide. So, as I mentioned earlier, I jumped a little bit ahead. So the pilot program, again, takes place over 5 years. And the reason that we used 5 years is we used a benchmark of 2030, of where things would be 2030, the increase in use of artificial intelligence by 2030. We wanted to have a midway point. We wanted to carefully monitor census data information, and we wanted to be able to benchmark year-over-year progression and what we're able to do. We also wanted to be able to scale the project based on year 1 by concentrating on the most populous areas and most of the rural areas, and recognizing that we would have concentrated areas of need in any urban area, and that we're going to have more spread out areas depending on areas. For example, if you look at Mississippi and some areas of the South, it would be further spread out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Yep. So did you identify an avenue through which you would identify individuals who were closest in skill level to filling a gap in a certain area?
So we took a comprehensive look at our main issue is sort of identifying the most at risk. And when we talked about identifying those that might be closest to the skill level, that's where we talk about that feedback loop with our existing partners, the NGOs, the municipalities, the skill force development organizations who are collecting that data. So we hope to create that database, that repository, where if we have a workforce partner that comes in and says, hey, I want to deploy micro-credentials in a particular area, we can point them and say, here's an area of critical need, but also this area has the closest to the population that you might need to fill this need. So that's sort of how we approached it.
So you talked about that there are others that have the micro credentials. So what makes this different? Is it that it's more expansive, or and is there some sort of kind of standardized way that people recognize these credentials?
And that's sort of our major issue, because it's a very fragmented market. I believe LinkedIn does something, Coursera, there's a plethora of providers, but we don't have a central organization that credentials or that stamps credentials as necessarily workforce ready. So we're creating this repository as a tool to build up that capacity so that we can have an overarching regulatory framework by which we recognize those credentials as being fit for the marketplace, and that's how we go out and sell to market.
Have you all, so I saw that you guys are going to use census data. I guess it's no real secret that this administration is struggling to meet its benchmarks and timeline for the upcoming census. It seems, I guess, risky to put all of your eggs in the census data basket. Are you guys planning on working with other data sets out there?
So the answer is yes. So we just use census as an overarching starting point, but we recognize there's NCIS, there's several data sets, but the census data is just general where we're assuming that it would be pegged to census data, but in addition to that, it would be an overlap, because one of the issues that we're identifying is there is a paucity in terms of any type of data. So it's census and other data is the way that this is reading, and with a very much emphasis on other data, and also the reason that we want to overlap it with public partnership, because we're assuming that we would have to correlate data from many other sources.
Yep. So at LinkedIn, we use what we call the economic graph, which is all the downstream data from our platform to help governments make better decisions in policy and workforce. One of the issues that we've run into when trying to work with other data providers is that everybody has proprietary methodologies. How do you look are you looking to create a new data set? And if not, how do you plan to work around that issue?
I can take that. And the reason I led by using the Department of Education, because we know if you look at the Department of Education, where you would think they have that data, it just simply says digital literacy, which tells you they don't. And if you take a deeper look at it, you'll see several footnotes, but then you click on it, and you'll see data that's at least 10 to 15 years old. And we are talking about modern digital literacy. So we already know that that's a problem. I can't use it as a nonprofit exec. So we are talking about using data sets. So if you're looking specific examples, going to LinkedIn and having a central repository where we can use data and representatives from the private company that you would be willing to share that data. And I think just because it does advance each individual company, that you do get a repository of willingly shared data with the understanding that, for example, in the use of AI, that you're able to advance it. With the use of internal company management, external company management, and future generation training, that you'll begin to coalesce that data so you'll be able to see what the outliers are and what areas need to be targeted.
Thank you, Team 4.
You're welcome. Thank you. We're just going to hold this.
Hello, I am Raphael Richard. I'm program manager of the T. Howard Foundation's internship program, where we recruit and train students, university students of color, to work with major media companies.
Good afternoon, Stephen Garlington, associate manager with T. Howard Foundation.
Hi, I'm Michael Burbanks. I'm a second year at Harvard Law School.
I'm Boris Crawford, Vice President for Instructional Services at Lawson State Community College.
Zolly Stevenson, Jr., Vice President for Academic Affairs, Philander Smith College, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay, so I'm first going to read the question that we were trying to figure out a solution to. So fostering a workplace that celebrates diversity can unlock innovation. The tech sector has historically struggled to cultivate a diverse workforce. How can governments and businesses better empower diverse workforces and support a talent pipeline?
All right, so I think if we want to move forward, how many of us have heard of like the resume experiment, where they've sent the resumes with certain names on it, and then they've changed the name, and we're familiar with that? Yes, or we may be familiar with, when you keep going, I'm sorry. One more. All right. Yep. So what we want to do is find solutions to some of those problems, but I'll let you talk about our goals a little bit, and then we'll go back to answer some of those questions to the previous slides.
So in looking at the problem of a diverse workplace, we created a tripartite solution of 3 goals. The first one is to decrease implicit bias in the hiring practice. The second is to improve early access to technology. And the third is to increase qualified candidates. We developed this by looking at each point of a hiring process. We decided to extend it before the particular instance of hiring, going back to the early instance of becoming more acquainted with technology.
All right, next slide. All right, so one of our first solutions to this problem, we'll go back to some of the earlier ones that he mentioned, but a blind employment application process. So if these processes were blind, and we were hiring managers not see your name, your race. Of course, some of that information needs to be reported because there are federal government regulation terms of reporting, but in that initial stage, it's blind, and taking buy-in from starting with our tech companies. If we get all the Googles and the Facebooks, the Verizons, the Zells to buy into this early application system, and they are developing it themselves, and that buy-in from all of those companies, and they have created this system that allows them to all solve that problem, because right now, everyone has their own unique diversity initiatives, and they're all trying to rush that same diverse talent diversity pipeline, but having this blind application process that each company can adopt will help to solve some of that biases in the early stages of that application process. And we have some ideas that can be in the form of an app and other solutions, but next slide. And then the second part we want to look at was public and private partnerships, which some of our counterparts talk about, for the development of K-12 curriculum. So this wouldn't be that the partnership is like, hey, I am this company and I'm giving you $10,000 to start this program. It's really looking at that curriculum development from specifically in the K-12 level, and thinking about how do we infuse coding at pre-K and kindergarten, and actually working with the tech companies and our local school boards to develop what that curriculum can look like. The second part of that, as well as the K-12 curriculum and certificate programs, that there will be public-private partnerships to develop what those programs can look like. And if we want to go then back to the, right. So how is solution novel and different? One, the first part in terms of that, the application process, it brings all of those companies to the table to solve that problem collectively. Again, as I mentioned, they all have those diversity initiatives, but together they're solving it collectively. Second one, how will this be adopted?
So our main focus was a public-private partnership, and adoption is something that we can still work with. We could do it by region, school district by school district, or larger region. But what we're hoping and what we'd like to see as a policy development is to really get buy-on by these companies, really talk to them, say, if you really want a more diverse workplace, rather than having just diversity initiatives, work with the local schools, use some of that economic capital to be social capital, so to create more qualified candidates and a better hiring process. Next slide. How does the solution scale? Good question. So how does it scale? I mean, the goal would naturally be a national process, but the way that it would scale is you'd have to demonstrate success. First, getting the buy-on by the large companies, Google, Microsoft, and seeing that if they really join local school districts, create a curriculum and certificate programs, that they would feel qualified, they would feel ready to hire those students. Hopefully that would create a more diverse workplace, and that can be extended to a larger scale.
Yep. And the first part of that scaling also is in our application processes. It really scales by them, that initial buy-in from those companies. So if they're all buying in, and then hopefully that can scale out and then insert itself into other industries. So if the tech companies come together and say, we have this product that can create a blind, non-biased hiring process, that can be used in other industries, including government.
Time.
So you all spoke a lot about, I guess, the recruitment piece of hiring a diverse workforce, but I want to ask you guys, I guess, about what my old boss calls the cultural homelessness problem. You get these young people of color into the door, but for instance, if someone on the East Coast moves out to the West Coast and they go to a company to find that they're the only person of color, they're the only black person, they're not. They experience a cultural homelessness, and they're not, particularly enjoying their time. And so the retention piece of that is also key. How does your solution address the retention piece here?
So I think, and part of that, I think we have ERGs, we have all these things. So creating that national pipeline, not only for the culture inside of the company, but outside of the company. So sending your employees to Afrotech, sending them to CBT to participate in things like this, to be a panelist. So I think, and part of it is bringing there. I don't think our solution in itself comes that, but what we hope is that early adoption of all these policies, and even from the application standpoint, hopefully someone's adopting this application standpoint, a blind application process, they're adopting culture around what that can look like. So there are several ways in which you can do that. I think the support outside, the professional development support outside of just the company itself will help impact that.
Thank you. Thank you to Mr. VC or Nicole, whoever came up with these questions, because these are all real questions that, I know eBay's dealing with and a lot of large companies are dealing with. So I don't know where you got them from, but kudos. I wanted to talk a little bit about, you guys talked about the blind process for resumes. We've been talking about that at eBay. People have been talking about it at other companies, and I just want to kind of piggyback off of what you just talked about, because even when we hide things like names, sometimes schools, where people grew up, kind of trigger and show their nationality or where they kind of come from. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about that and see if you guys thought about that, and kind of see if you have a solution to it.
Like, how do you make it completely blind?
So actually one of the things that we actually did think about this. One of the possible solutions that we came up with was taking it to, and this is innovative and novel, but thinking where the platform you would first apply and you would fill out the whole, submit your resume, and instead of it auto sourcing into like this populace, it would create like a QRC. Is that what they call it? One of those scannable things that you scan. And so the recruiter on the other end would scan it, and it would only show what was relevant to the position, so whether it's skills or experience, and then through that process you'd move forth. So it would kind of hide whatever you need to be hidden until at what point you get to the next process.
And I just wanted to just quickly add, my name is Denzel, so you may be able to tell I'm black by my name, but, when you throw in Hobart, William, and Smith, that's such a small school, it throws people off. Or certain things, like I said, so just kind of things like that, like how do you, again, like how you said, how do you make it blind?
We're talking about the fact that those things would not be available to be seen. You only pick up the experiences, that they will have the work experience. You make the judgment based on work experience. The labor laws and the employment laws can prevent you from discriminating against race, color, creed, and all those kinds of things, but it does not prevent you from discriminating based on experiences. So we want to be able to hire persons.
Apologies, time. Just for that question. Just for that question.
So I have an adjacent question. Did you all talk about how to partner with universities that are diverse, so HBCUs, university like FIU that is predominantly Hispanic and then also has very diverse students, because that is another, to your point, I think that is a problem when we come in. Those schools aren't as recognized outside of the people of color community, and so when people come in and they see a 3.8 from Tuskegee, they don't think that that's a 3.8 from Harvard.
Right. We did talk about
which it is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I won't get into that part, but we did talk about that. We also talked about a strategy for looking at the workforce development plans of different states, because the needs vary. In Arkansas, the need is somewhat different than what it would be in Maryland, for example. Everybody has a technology need, but there are also other needs that need to be looked at. So some of the sources of people to fill those needs would be from Hispanic serving institutions, MSIs, and HBCUs. We have a partnership with the state of Arkansas now. They come to us to look for people to go into mechanical engineering, to go into nursing and those other areas where there's a dearth of people of color in those areas, and the state, at least half of the state, is predominantly black. So yes, we did talk about that.
All right. Thank you, Team 5. The judges now have the difficult and unenviable task of picking which team will be crowned the champion from this afternoon's policy hack. I'll give the judges 5 minutes to collaborate and discuss.
Can you hit our mics?
Okay, quick decision.
Yeah, and we will hide their mics. or Stan, come over here. Everyone come over here.
Do we need to go down or just stay right here? We can stand right here.
He's killed the mic, so y'all can.
Okay, there you go.
The ladies.
I'm excited about Team 3 because I also get excited about the Congressional. So that is my bias. My bias is good.
I thought theirs was the most cohesive. It was imaginative, very well put together, and had all the components. Well, and I thought the view was so innovative that your crowdsourcing to get the demographic that you need to help with the AI, but then you're also getting that demographic education. So I liked how, you have one solution that's not.
From a corporate standpoint, that seemed to be a nice connection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's actually 30 days.
Well, I thought. Yeah, because it would be a return on investment to me.
Yeah, because
we concluded that everybody was really awesome, and we wish that we could name all of them winners. Really, because we really thought that so many of the presentations were so great. But as it relates to how important education is today, in particular, we chose number 3. We thought that number 3 did a wonderful job. Congratulations, Team 3. Just really thought that that your application was just really so practical for today and so useful for parents. And as a legislator, I thought that, wow, that's something that, I could work on, when I go back to DC when the votes can start back up next week. So thank you.
Thanks to all of our participants. If you're from Team 3, could you please make sure to check in with Lourdes, because we want to make sure we get your name and contact information, because the fun thing about the policy hack is that the idea doesn't just end today. We're now going to take it, work with the judges, work with the congressmen, work with others to figure out what we can do with the idea so it's not just sitting on the shelf. So Lourdes will collect your contact information.
All right.
Thank you very much, Congress.